Welcome to the Boston Art Podcast,
Boston's premier art podcast,
where we talk art, culture, and philosophy.
My name is Theodore Earthworms.
And I am Brian Huntress.
Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah, so amazing. Yeah, if we're ready to go, welcome to the show. You are Blond in Car, an amazing Omnichord musician that me and Theo both found on TikTok.
Thank you. Well, TikTok, people like to complain about social media, and there's plenty that is wrong with the internet and social media, but I love TikTok. So many wonderful things have come into my life because of Instagram and TikTok that I'm nothing but grateful.
I agree completely, and it's like, I've found it over the years, because I'm a musician too, and I've found over the years that it's like, I've always found it such a massive advantage because one thing that's been a privilege to me throughout my life, I'm 28 right now, but when I was starting out, all the open mics I would go to were all people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I've always imagined what those people would have done or what they could have been exposed to or known if they had the advantages that I have with the internet.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, there's no question that my entire life in music, which is something that started only fairly recently, is something that could never have happened any other time ever in history. Every single aspect of it, from the ability to release music independently to the ability to promote it like crazy on social media platforms, all of it's been, plus, obviously the ability to record digitally and make amazing sounding music in your bedroom. All of it is something that was unimaginable until this moment in time. So while I wish I had figured out music a long time ago, in many ways I'm super grateful timing-wise because it would have been impossible, and it's kind of a miracle that I get to do what I get to do, and that I'm talking to you right now. All of it, it's just kind of a dream.
Yeah, I mean, even podcasting could only exist in the digital age, because can you imagine trying to record like 2.5 hours or an hour on a tape?
Right. Yeah.
That'd be a nightmare.
The greatest. And I'm a person I used to work in radio when I was in college, and I was a DJ, and also did public affairs interviews. And I love the human voice, and I love radio so much. And podcasting, I used to dream of the day that you could actually record fresh air and hear it anytime you wanted. And the fact that podcasts are now available, and I get so much from them. I love them so much. And again, yeah, it's absolutely one more thing that is just fabulous that we really should not take for granted, because it's something that only exists now. It's amazing.
It really puts into perspective how rapidly and drastically that developed too. It's pretty crazy. Even thinking about the podcast that we do, this is the first audio project that I've worked on. We've been doing it for about 3.5 years, but I can imagine trying to do this even 10 years ago would have been a completely different landscape.
It would be, and and it's interesting, and it is not to be taken for granted, that and the ability to distribute music. I used to work in film, which is what I did before I discovered that I could create my own music. And in film, when you make an independent film, you do not have the ability to release it. You can't go to Netflix or Apple and say, hey, will you take a look at my independent movie and maybe put it on your platform? You cannot do that. You need a middle person. And this is a thing that I didn't even realize working in film, the ability to have DistroKid, an independent distributor that any artist can use to reach every platform you want to on music and do an effective job. That does not exist in every medium. And for podcasts, it's also, a very fortunate thing that you can do it. Because in film, you have to go to what they call an aggregator or what they call a distributor, even though they don't really distribute anything except for deals. It's a middle person who Netflix will deal with. You can't go straight to platforms. You can't go to some independent Vimeo or something and reach every platform in the same way as you can in music or podcasts. So it's really amazing.
Your story kind of reminds me of, I was at an art show recently, and I was talking to a woman who runs a gallery, and she was telling me that she's having so much fun running a gallery and doing so well because she previously worked in the museum field, and which is so much more strict and slow moving, and that once she went into the gallery world, it was all just full speed. She could do anything she wanted, move fast, make fast, fun decisions. And I wonder if you identify with that, because with an extensive experience in film, or I noticed that I saw somewhere in an article that you also worked in professional songwriting. Like, do you think that you're doing as well as you are because of that hindered background, like having to go through so much red tape and aggregators and middlemen and stuff?
Well, there's no question that. So my story is that I worked in film as an executive and as a producer, climbing that ladder my whole adult life. I was always a music fan. I loved music more than anything, but I loved it so much that I thought that the people that make music are kind of gods, and how dare anyone think that they could be that. So I played classical piano growing up, and I sang in choruses, but I never learned a pop song, and I never thought to write a song. To me, that was what you did if you were Kurt Cobain and you were as tortured and charismatic and, deep an artist as that. So I just felt that was the realm of the gods, and how, it wouldn't even have crossed my mind. So I worked in film my whole adult life, and I ran some pretty meaningful companies and worked my tail off. And when I had this whole crisis of mojo about 7 years ago, when I suddenly, after being so gung-ho about it, didn't want to do film one more minute, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And through a lot of crying, meditating, soul-searching, reading The Alchemist, everything, I finally arrived at the idea that I wanted to write songs. And I thought that the people that you could write songs for were country artists, because I thought they were the only people that didn't write their own songs. I had no idea that in pop music, I don't know why I didn't know this, but in pop music, or even alternative, which was the area that has always been my taste, that people write with songwriters. I thought that everyone was Kurt Cobain, and it comes from their deepest soul. And the idea that REM would take a song from another songwriter that wasn't Jimmy Webb from the 60s was something that didn't occur to me at all. So I thought, oh my God, I want to be a songwriter, and I'm going to learn how to write for country artists. And so I did that for the first year and a half, and that was in 2017. I went to Nashville as much as possible, and I started working in country. And in country music, there's this saying about you're not a writer until you've written 100 songs. So every time I would sort of think, what's the future in this for me? I'm a Jewish girl from LA. Would I really be a successful country songwriter, particularly because it's all bro country right now? And not only are all the artists men, but all the writers are men. And they write authentically about trucks and fishing and guns and stuff that I really don't know anything about. But I would say, no, don't even think about that. You're not allowed to think about that, because you have to write 100 songs and then you can think about it. So I think at about 45, song 45, suddenly a thing entered my life, which is that a friend of mine from film mentioned that he needed a Coldplay song for a trailer that he was working on. We just went out to dinner, and he's like, if you wrote a song like that, you could get that in trailers, because everyone needs that kind of song. They need a song that's not as expensive as Coldplay to license, but starts out earnest and that gets anthemic and has maybe a kind of a plaintive male falsetto voice and all of the little ingredients, approximately those beats per minute. And I came out of that dinner and oh my God, I want to write a Coldplay song. I don't think I'm trying to write for Luke Bryan. That sounds like a lot more fun. And I don't have to leave Los Angeles, which is where I live, and I like it here. So I immediately I segued from trying to write for country artists to writing for film, TV, commercial trailers. And to finally get back to your question, I did really well at it very quickly. Our very first song we wrote the next day got licensed to Teen Mom, which is sort of like the entry-level licensing everybody gets is MTV, because it doesn't pay that much, but there are a lot of streams and a lot of residuals. And it was so thrilling. And that song got licensed, a bunch more times. And from that day on, all I did was write with other artists for sync, which is what they call it, which is licensing for film and those kind of media. And very quickly, I thought, what I wanted to do was curate my little own assemblage of teams. So I hunted really hard for great producers and singers of all different stripes. So everything from hip hop kind of swaggy girl power stuff to big anthemic Imagine Dragons kind of sounding music, all different kinds of voices that would meet all different kinds of moods. And I think maybe the fact that I came from storytelling and film and also putting songs in movies, that I had an understanding of what works over picture. Because even, and people talk about sync as though it's a lower life form. And to me, it wasn't. I tried to write absolutely amazing songs every single time I did it. But I kind of knew that if you're trying to write a song about female power, that's not quite the same as female rage. It's not the same as female, it's the best day of my life. There's a very, it's kind of general and yet very specific, because the emotion that you're writing for is specific. And the words need to feel kind of general, but the message, the emotional message of the song needs to be quite potent and meaningful. And I loved it. So I think maybe both the storytelling part and also a little bit the work ethic part, because I think, I wrote twice a day, and I wanted to have just tons of this amazing, camera-ready, affordable, outstanding, emotional music that would place. And we, and I did really well. So I did that with so much, it was so much fun. I loved it to death, and learned so much about songwriting for all different kinds of voices. And I did that for about another 2+ years. And then I started having ideas for my own songs. And then that started me doing Blond in Car, which was something I never expected in a million years, but has become the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm so happy that it's found an audience, because truly, they call this the second act, which is when you've had a career, and then when you're pretty old, you discover that there's something else you've always dreamed of doing, which this was a dream I didn't even let myself dream, but I found what I'm on this planet to do, which is write songs. And, you bring, hopefully, the maturity, the work habits, some kind of wisdom, and maybe long simmering talent. I write with so many people that are even under 20, and tons of people that are from 20 to 25. And a lot of them have been doing it for 12 years already, and they're a little burnt out. And I am not burnt out. My appetite for this is voracious. I mean, I'm obsessed, and I love it so much. And learning every part of it is a total joy to me, and, kind of miraculous, because it would have been so easy for me to never be doing any of this.
Right. Something, too, that sticks out to me when we were talking about social media, and that background in film possibly having an impact on your ability to kind of connect the music to the visuals. I think something that really stands out about your, the whole brand of Blond in Car is the visual element in the content that you're making. The way we found you was on TikTok with reels and video, and how that kind of, the way that you're dressed and the way that the video is edited and the cuts and everything and the angles really flow into the kind of music you're making. And it all has that kind of vintage feel.
Thank you.
I just find that really interesting. How are you thinking about the content in that way? They're sort of a film project in the same way?
It's funny, because when I worked in film, my obsession was always about writers. I always was in love with writers, and that was my strong suit. Was I was really good at finding distinctive material, whether it was books or screenwriters or scripts or comic books or anything early. I didn't need to hear from somebody else that it was good to know when I found something that I thought was special. And so that was sort of my thing. But what I don't think I was amazing at, and that has a lot to do with detail, certain just twists of dialogue or a character that just stays with you, or even the way the character is introduced, little things. I was always about the details, and I never felt that marketing, what's the hook, was my strong suit. But then when you work in music, particularly country, it's all about the hook. So, but I think regarding Blond in Car and its quote-unquote brand, I love so much that is working for you, and it does seem to be working, and it's been so much fun because people appreciate it. I've always been a vintage clothes person. It didn't help me in Hollywood. That wasn't cool at the time. I've done even some TikToks talking about the way I would dress for interviews. That was definitely eccentric, and but I thought that was, that was just my style, and so I've had a lifetime to know who I am, and I think that helps a lot. I know, I like color. I like retro, and it's funny because it's created a sound too. I know what I want my music to sound like innately. You know, Dan Wilson, who's a songwriting guru to me and many others, he's an amazing songwriter, and he says a lot of really wise things. But one thing that he said that I always think about is he says, write the music, create the music you wish existed. And I just let that be my guide. But I think it goes, I mean, and even like the Omnichord, the kooky instrument I play, which is kind of an 80s toy synth that has a groovy sound, you know, it's just my aesthetic. I like vintage things. I like that kind of sound. I love synths. I love lo-fi. I guess, you know, some of it's intentional. I do think that I'm a little maybe better at editing than I would be if I hadn't worked in film and hadn't spent all that time thinking about editing and, you know, the visual. But I think it has more to do with my age and just my personality than anything else. But I'm so grateful that people like it and that you notice, because it's just delightful that, you know, that it hasn't always made me popular, and it seems to be working right now. I mean, I was always way too kooky for film. You know, it's much more like bro-y, and like if I had been more of a sorority girl kind of girl, I think I would have done better. I was always more on the kooky side, and, you know, that was more conformist industry. But this seems to be working, which is awesome. It's really funny and great.
I think the social media space gives more freedom, especially to women, for that kind of kookiness. Like, it doesn't come across as kooky, I guess. It comes across as just very confident and interesting, which I think it's nice that there's a place for that.
That's so lovely. Well, seriously, confidence is a really interesting thing, because I have a certainty about this stuff that I never had previously in my life. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about a lot that I've started to talk about on my social media is about being old, and even saying the word old, which was a word I was terrified of until about 5 months ago. And I'm not actually exaggerating, you know. I was kind of hoping nobody noticed, which is really hilarious, because, of course, I'm in plain sight and I don't look like I'm 25. And I just kind of hoped I was getting away with something. And then all of a sudden I've come out about it, and it's so liberating, because I really am having the best time of my entire life now. And I'm really old, and I feel good about myself. I love the people that find my music. They all want me to be their mom. I think it's the sweetest thing in the universe. You know, there's a place, and it makes me unusual in a way that is kind of wonderful, because I feel for all, you know, I just went to a party recently, and all these 4 girls that were all about 26, 27 mobbed me because they're Blond and Car fans from Instagram or wherever. And they're all stressing out about turning 30. And it breaks my heart, because they're so young, they're beautiful, they're talented. It's very hard, the ageism in our world. And I'm so out of the realm of normal that in a way it is liberating, but it tortured me for a very long time. My whole life I've been tortured about my age. In Hollywood, they have those 30 under 30 lists all the time, the 35 under 35, the go-getters. And if you aren't on that list, you feel like you're a failure and you're too old and you're aging out. So I'm really glad that I found this. I'm super grateful that I have my health, because you never know how that's going to go. And if you're not healthy, you can't do any of these things. But if you are healthy, you have to make the most of your time on this planet. And that's my message, is that there's nothing shameful about being a person with wrinkles or years on them. In fact, it's wonderful. And the only other thing I want to say is, when you say the platform about women, I think it is, and not to only talk about the females, but, you know, the algorithm found my girls, and they all say either be my mom or I want to be you when I grow up. It's really sweet. I hope I don't sound immodest when I say that. But like, to be able to fill that spot.
Yeah.
And the girls are the ones that say it. And my music is very girly. I love the men that like my music because it shows that they are not afraid of their softer side, and they shouldn't be. And that's a hard thing about being a man. But I'm so grateful that the algorithm. We all complain about the algorithms, but it found my people, and they're all so sweet and beautiful, and they inspire me. And so I'm glad that to them it looks confident and cool because, it hasn't always looked that way to people, and I've arrived here.
Yeah.
And one thing that's so cool about your content too is that I think it's deceptively casual. Speaking of the confidence, because you're like in your home and you're like singing this fun song on the Omnichord, and it's like, but one thing that it might maybe, I don't know if a lot of people notice, but to me it looks they're incredibly well produced. Like the video quality is perfect, the audio is perfect, and I actually had some.
We work hard on them.
What's up?
We work pretty hard on them, actually. It's really fun, but it's
shows.
My half-time job. Thank you.
Because I was curious about that too, because I'm wondering, are you recording your vocals in the Omnichord live into a mic while you're filming?
I would say about half the time we do them live. And then I work with an amazing friend whose name is Andrew Perea, and he's in the band Wilt. What happened to me is I went to a party, and I met this kid in the band Wilt, which is a great LA band, and they're on tour right now. They're killing it. They're actually so talented. They're like kind of almost grunge, modern grunge, and great songwriters. They have an amazing singer named Chelsea Simone, and I have a TikTok up right now with her. She and I doing a little collab. Because she's a Gummygirl and she became a fan. But I've totally infiltrated this band. And I'm actually doing songs with them. I have 3 new songs that I've done with them because it's my dream to make a record that sounds like Always. They're my favorite band. And,
I love them.
I love them too. And the 3 songs are all super cool. I cannot wait. I want to do a whole record. I want to do everything. But Andrew shoots me. And he's super gifted, and he also mixes. So even when we do the Omnichord live, and it's hard to mix because it's just one, we do separate the two. We have the Omnichord through the pedal into the what's the word I want to say?
Like the interface or something, like the audio
interface. So we do that live through the interface, and the audio is into the computer. So he can mix it a little just between vocal and thing. But the ones where I really feel like they gotta have like lots of background vocals, and I try and be very purist about it, and I try and have all the instruments. So when we do it live, it's obviously just Omnichord and vocal, and it's live, and that's it. And I sing it live, and I can't make any mistakes, and it's rigorous, but it's great. And that's about half the time. And the other half of the time are things where I think it's just gotta have harmonies and lots of Omnichord tracks. And there I try and be very purist, and I record all the instruments myself on Omnichord. And I do a bass line, I do drums. Sometimes I do 2 to 3 drum tracks. I'll do 1 drum track on the Omni, but I'll do about 3 to 4 strum tracks, and then I'll do like a bass line track, which is a single note, and then I'll even do like a high pad on the Omnichord, and then I'll do like anywhere from 4 to 12 to 15 vocal tracks. On Blond and Car songs, I produce all my own vocals, and I come up with all those arrangements, and my producer gets mad at me because my producer, Ged Lerner, who's also known as Nine Theory, who's also amazing, he gets frustrated because my vocal tracks fill up the song so fully that it's like no room for instruments. But I will do anything from 30 to 50 vocal tracks.
Oh my God.
I know. I take
That's awesome.
Forever. Yeah, I do. And I'll do like Because, that's what happens to me. I mean, we talk about make the sound you want to hear. It's what I hear. So I'll be like, I'm afraid of quiet, which is really funny because I'm working with my beloved Ella Vos right now, and she has lots of negative space. And I'm like, we have to fill it. It has to get filled. So if there's I write long vocal lines, and then I try and put, there's usually 2 doubles, 2 octave up doubles, sometimes an octave down doubles. Then there'll be close harmony, at least starting in the second verse. Then there'll be pads. And if I do 1 pad and I double that, and then I'm like, oh, but doesn't it want to have the harmony to it? So I'll do a lower harmony to the pad, then I'll do an upper harmony to the pad, then there'll be a little fill. So between the 2 lines, it'll go ooh, and then I'll do a harmony to the ooh, and then I'll do an octave down. It just keeps growing until it's so funny because I'm going on. This is becoming a very long-winded answer, but it's so much fun. And in a weird way, again, in the what is a negative can be a positive. It was only because of COVID that I learned how to do vocals. That was sort of my goal for the year, but I didn't really know I would do it because I was afraid of Logic and, the computer would sort of do weird things to me because it knew it could. And, every time I'd sit down, it would present me with some new, completely upsetting, confusing thing. And it would be like, okay, I quit. But then it was COVID and I just said, okay, what else can I do? I got to learn to produce vocals here. So I bought myself a nice mic, got myself good equipment, and made up my little studio and learned how. So, so half the songs have 1 million tracks, but they are only vocal and Omni, bass line, drums, everything. And then the ones that are live are just live. And usually you can tell because if there's a mic in the picture, it's usually live. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you'll notice there isn't a mic. And once in a while we faked it. But usually, if there's a mic in the shot, it's live. And we do work hard on this because I spend a lot of hours not just learning the songs, but figuring out how I want them to sound, getting to them to the right BPM, then recording all the Omni tracks. And then Andrew mixes them and makes them sound really groovy. And he slaps a ton of auto-tune on me, which for some reason I think it always sounds amazing, but it sounds really good on my voice. And it ends up sounding groovy with the Omnichord. And so he deserves a lot of credit for our final sound. But it is a lot of work, but it's also so awesome because my thing is I never played guitar growing up. So I didn't learn Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles on the guitar. And I didn't learn every Rolling Stones song or every Beatles song. I never did any of that. So now I learn all these songs for the Omnichord, and it's very interesting to learn. Like when I did What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, which was one of the first ones we did, it was very interesting to learn that song structure and to see what chords it was. And it's interesting how Lana Del Rey, I did Young and Beautiful recently, and that was really interesting. It's so interesting and great for songwriting to learn these songs and to see. Again, I just did that amazing song, Austin, by Dasha, which is a viral song right now, that country song. And with both Taylor and this Dasha song, it continued. And the SZA song that I just did Kill Bill, they're 4 chords. When people, because I tend to use a lot of weird chords, I tend to be attracted to that, and because I don't know what I'm doing, and I just make them up as I go. But these 4-chord songs that have incredible melodies and incredibly surprising rhythms and just melodies for every section. It's so inspiring to listen to learn this Dasha song and hear what she did with 4 chords. And it's also a pleasure because it makes it easy to record it live on the Omnichord and just play the 4 chords while I'm trying to remember all the words. It's good.
Something that's really coming across too for me is I love music, and Brian's a musician, so I'm with them a lot when they're writing, but I've always been really daunted by the idea of getting into making music. It's kind of overwhelming and scary, but there's so much excitement and actual passion coming through in what you're saying right now with so much fun, having so much fun with the technical stuff that it's really exciting. I know you talked about learning Logic. There was a little bit of a learning curve and it was a little upsetting and overwhelming, but was that part of the reason you think that you didn't get into music earlier? Was it kind of daunting in that sense?
I just never thought it was for me. I just never, it honestly did not even enter the realm of my thinking very much. When I think about like people that are in their 20s in college and they have a band, like I didn't think I was skinny enough. I didn't think I was beautiful enough. I just, it's just, that was for the gods and goddesses and not for me.
Yeah.
And so the joy you hear coming from me is the joy of a person who found what their purpose is. And, you know, what's really funny is when I tell that story about how I was driving on Olympic and listening to, well, I don't even know if I told that part, but I was, you know, when I was meditating and trying to figure out what to do with myself, and I didn't want to do film anymore, I was reading The Alchemist, and it made me realize I'd never found my calling, and I was going to go to my death a coward because I'd never found my true purpose. And I was wretched and crying every day, and I didn't know what my purpose was, but all that came out of all of that soul searching was, I just want to learn to play guitar. I never learned it growing up, and I never could do music for fun. It was always rigorous. It was for recitals and learning Bach and, like, you know, intellectual. And I love that, and I love classical. I'm a subscriber to the Philharmonic. It's a beautiful thing to do, and I'm really grateful I did that. But I was just like, I want to learn how to bang out 3 chords on the guitar. So I started taking guitar lessons at McKay's, which is a local music store in LA. And all of a sudden I was hearing songs in my head and I couldn't sleep. And I'm like, what is going on here? This is amazing. And then I was driving on Olympic listening to country radio. And I had this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, these people don't write their own songs. I could write songs for country radio. I don't have to be a gorgeous, beautiful young artist. I can write songs for country artists. And I came home and I called my mother and I said, I know what I'm doing with the rest of my life. And I realize now, I mean, I didn't even realize until recently that when I called her and said that, I hadn't written one song yet. And I didn't know if I'd be any good at it, but I knew. I just knew that it was what I'm here for. I knew with absolute certainty, like, oh my God, I finally found it. And so I wake up in the morning excited I can't believe I get to do this thing. It's like eating candies. It's like someone said, go to the best candy store in the entire world and just eat every single thing you want, and then it will make it even more amazing for you, and you can eat those. And then on top of that, you can then eat all the ice cream on top of it. Like it's all like playing with the funnest toy you could ever play with. And how could I not be thrilled to do that every day? And when I get to work with people that are so good at so many parts of this, and you learn about instruments and the sounds they can make and how you can affect them, and every part of it is thrilling to me. And you know, the songwriting is the core of all of it, because, you know, and if you get intimidated about it, my message to you is just jump in and decide they can be terrible. Plan on writing some terrible, terrible songs. Plan on singing terribly. Plan on every part of it being terrible, and just go with that. Write the shittiest song you can. Make that your goal for the day. And don't try and write something great. Don't even think about writing something great. Actually, write the dumbest, worst song you could. Honestly, make that be your goal for the first year of doing it, not just for the day. Decide they should all be terrible. Decide that you are going to make them terrible and stupid, so that anyone will try and make them the dumbest song you can think of. I bet you'll write an amazing song inside of yourself.
Because when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, think of the dumbest song you know and go, I'm going to make it even dumber. Write the worst lyric you could. Right? Honestly, I could tell you something. I wrote this song, Except in My Head. It's one of my personal favorites because of the way I wrote it. I ate a gummy, and I was missing someone really bad in a painful way. And I just thought about all the things I wish were happening. And I thought, maybe you're missing me as much as I miss you. And I thought that was such a dumb lyric. And I wrote the most just straightforward emotional stuff. And to my surprise, I love it so much now. I wrote what I thought was dumb in second grade and not clever and not poetic. And it's so sweet and heartbreaking. I just wrote one. My husband just broke up with me. And I wrote this song about, no more wishing you'd say to me, you look pretty, I love the way you dance. I mean, like, these are very third grader kinds of lines. But sometimes I think the most simple, honest, true, straight from your heart things you could say end up being really meaningful to somebody and really brave because they're coming straight from your heart.
Yeah.
Sometimes you write a poetic song, but Donna's songs, I think about that Troye Sivan song, what is it? I'm so tired. Like, that's a fucking great song. And it's a huge song. And I think they wrote that not thinking it was Einstein level, believe me. You know? So I just would absolve yourself of any pressure for it to be good. Make your whole goal that it be, forget even terrible, make it mediocre. Make it corny. Make it just absolutely insipid. And just have fun and just be dumb.
Yeah. One thing I really love about your story too is that you're talking about times where you didn't think you could do this and there was some apprehension, but there's this constant thread of you just actualizing your ambition and just trying shit anyway. And I feel like we talk to a lot of artists of all ages that have so much trouble breaking through that veil where they have this great art in their head, but they're just so scared or they have so much apprehension. But what do you feel like there was a time where you didn't have that ability to just break through and just be like, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want?
Absolutely. It's funny because not to go back to film again, but like I remember, when I was in film, and part of why I had this whole crisis of mojo is I just felt in my heart of hearts that I was sort of a B+ at it. I knew I was really good at finding distinctive stuff. But when it came to being on set and knowing my place as a producer, I had no instincts for it. And I feel like in music, I have tons of instincts. Like I know, even when we were doing single, like I knew, like in this song, I don't want there to be any me or you. No you. Let's not have any you in this song. I just would feel things that I just knew would be right for the song. I could listen to that inside of me. But my instincts did not lead the way and did not carry me when I was in film. And I remember knowing a friend of mine who I thought was an A+. Like I would know people that I would feel like were made for it, the way I didn't feel I was made for it. And I remember all the things he would develop, all the projects he would work on were things he wanted to, they had a brand, they had a personality. A lot of them were sort of pop culture. They were not necessarily easy things to get made, but they were things that you could tell, like, he just wanted to work on. And I always, that didn't guide me in film. I would always sort of try to find, I don't know, it wasn't like that for me. It also, there's something to be said for doing this when I don't have all the time in the world. I mean, I feel like I've got 10 more years while I still look reasonably cute in a way that, I mean, I'm hoping I have more, but your voice goes. There are things, who knows what will happen to me health-wise. I don't want to assume that I won't have any health problems. Like when you get old, you never know. People die all the time. So I don't feel I have a minute to waste. And so I think that for all those young people, they have the luxury of knowing that they're young and it causes indecision. Believe me, they're way more decisive than I was at that age. At that age, I couldn't even think about this yet. I matured to this at this time. And it's an interesting lesson because I think by deciding that old is bad, old is ugly, old is boring, all these things which it isn't, we dismiss the potential for a whole huge chunk of our lives where we actually can do amazing things, whether it's deciding you want to sell something at the produce market because you like growing radishes, or whether it's doing what I'm doing. There's a self-realization that comes later in life if you listen for it, and if you are self-accepting in that way. I believe that's going to change for so many people. I really think generationally that's going to change. I think our repudiation of anybody over 40 is, I don't even think that Gen X, Gen Z, and I don't know what the alphas are about, but my daughter who's 21 loves Grace and Frankie more than most boomers I know. She's bitched it 3 times. And they don't, I think that boomers had this residue from the 60s, which was, don't trust anyone over 30. This whole thing about older people being conformist and the man, and particularly for women who've never been the man. I just don't think we have to be burdened by that way of looking at later years. And I think there's a lot of confidence and certainty, and I don't have a lot of time to waste that comes with that phase of life.
Right. Which is such an encouraging thing to hear.
It's hard to be so. It is encouraging because we don't have to think that life ends at 30 or 40.
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't. And people are. The idea that people over 40 aren't beautiful is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I think the most beautiful people are in their 80s. I mean, I did a TikTok about this, but I mean, I'm going to slay. If I make it to 80s, I'm going to slay. I know what I'm going to wear, and because I'm going to be the best dressed person in my 80s, and because just like now I stand out because I'm old, but I'm kind of act young. I'm going to be the same way in my 80s, and I'm going to wear solid colors in weird colors and extreme jewelry. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into like a really cool part of like your videos and everything you've been doing. Is you mentioned being interested in fashion, vintage fashion and stuff. Like the visuals in your videos are so distinct, and the outfits you're wearing are so specific and cool. Do you have any artistic like influences for like how you're choosing these outfits? Is it all just intuitive, or are you like, I don't know? Would you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, I've always been a vintage girl. I have a 1929 house that I fully restored.
Oh, cool.
And you can see it a little bit in the videos. I like vinyl. I mean, you know, vintage clothes, I just love them. We've shopped vintage from the time I was in grade school. My mother liked going to flea markets and Goodwill and secondhand stores. And, you know, if you appreciate the work that goes into, I mean, I've been collecting Emilio Pucci, for example, who is a great designer of the 60s and 70s. And what's really interesting about Pucci is, for some unknown reason, a lot of it lasts. It was well enough made, because there's some amazing designers where there just isn't much around anymore, because a lot of that stuff is now becoming 80 years old. It's hard for garments to last that long.
Right.
But I think Pucci was never cheap. It was not, you know, so people took care of it, and it was well made, and it's in silk and cotton and wool, and I've been collecting it forever. And a lot of the trademark Blond and Carr stuff is I wear Pucci, and you know, it's got these, and I've always loved a lot of color. I always like mixing patterns. I sort of feel like if you're wearing one pattern, why not wear two or three? And so I really love florals with plaids, and I just feel like if you're not pushing it, like you're not thinking hard enough about what you're wearing. And I just, you know, and we've just always loved it. It's one of the things when I travel, it's one of the best ways you can get to know a city, whether it's in Europe or, India or here, is to go and look at the vintage clothes, because you see the labels of the department stores that used to be regional.
Oh, wow.
And the labels are so beautiful. And it reflects the city. You know, one of the things that I always think about is that I went to Cincinnati with my family, which is a city I like. I actually was born there, and we moved when I was 4 months, so I never spent time there, but we've taken my mother on roots trips there. And right before I went there one year, while I was still working in film, I didn't have very big closets, so I had to take all of my clothes for the season I wasn't in, and put it in this massive suitcase in my garage. And I'm not even going to go into detail here, but it molded. So I had no summer clothes. So we went to Cincinnati, and I'm like, I'm going to buy a ton of summer clothes if I can find them. And what I wanted to find was like sheets. I wanted to find cool linen or cotton or some kind of great sheet dresses that I could pair with little jackets or little sweaters or something to wear to the office. Those were clothes for summer. And shopping in Cincinnati, this is the Midwest. These were people that took care of their stuff. They were and you got to just see the history of the city through the vintage clothing. you got to learn about the department stores. You got to see the kind of styles they wore. I got so many amazing, great sheath dresses there with cutouts and just amazing fabric. And here's another one, and because I could go on and on about it, because sometimes you go to the flea and you see somebody, and also, living in Los Angeles, it is one of the best things about living here is the flea markets are fantastic. They're every weekend something amazing. I don't go anymore because I'm not allowed to buy anything. My house is full. I don't need to accumulate more stuff. And but a lot of the people that sell there will find a home, an estate that they bought the whole thing. And you get to see a woman's life in clothes. You get to see what she wore in the 70s when she was in her 20s and it was wild, and the size is a little smaller because she was slimmer maybe. You get to see the shoes she wore and when she became a mom. And you get to even see like her maternity clothes. I mean, you even can see her baby clothes sometimes. You can see a whole life in the clothes that you see in one rack, and you can tell the department store she liked the most, and you learn all about this unknown woman. I mean, my sister and I go crazy over this stuff because it's like the most beautiful thing in the world. You fall in love with this woman through her clothes, and then when you buy them, you want to honor these clothes. And what's funny is when people compliment my outfit, if I'm wearing something, I'm always like, I know, I love it too, because it's not me. It's this thing that someone created that I found that I get to wear for this particular time in history. I hope so much that my clothes, my daughter's so teeny that I don't think they'll fit her, which is a real shame. And I hope that they'll go on and that some awesome person who loves Pookie or, all the designers that I sort of collect from those eras, I hope that they care for them and pass them on. It's like, it's just creations. They're just creations. It's like loving a song.
Yeah. My mom collects vintage clothes. She has a lot of coats and shoes from the 70s, and she thinks about it the same way. It's like an art collection that is just she gets so excited when she gets new pieces.
Every day.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to express yourself.
It totally is. I mean, when you think about, and also, in the whole world of like being a feminist, it's one of the great things about being female, and it's why I love Harry Styles, because he's making it funner for men. I love when men wear pearls. I love when men fall in love with the kinds of I love men's clothes. They're beautiful. And when men at these award shows are starting to have more fun with what they wear, because it's total self-expression. I guess people do it through makeup now. I don't like to wear too much makeup because I don't think it makes me look better and I'm too lazy. But I think women are having so much fun with that and with a lot of different things. And I want men to get to have fun with it too. And you've got to go check out your mom's stuff and see what she's not wearing and get her to give it to you so you can enjoy some of her finds. Because, it is totally, it's like doing a little art piece every day. And, what bag you wear, what shoes you wear. And it's also not that I don't like current, designers and things. It's just that I love vintage. I think it's timeless. And now that I'm on TikTok, I watch a lot of these influencers talk about the trends. And I'm like, oh, my God. So trench coats are in now, and people are wearing dresses over pants, and people want to wear a little ballet flat. And I'm like, I never think about trends. I only think about finding, like when I discover a designer from the past that I wasn't paying attention to, that is exciting to me. But it's also how far your dollar goes, because like when I worked in film and I needed to have a lot of jackets so I could somewhat power dress, if you buy a $400 jacket on sale somewhere, that's a good, designish person, that doesn't even go that far. But what $400 buys you in the world of Pookie, something fantastic. Something that we will treasure forever, that was beautifully made, that's a fabric you can't buy anymore. Yeah. You can't buy fabric like this anymore. The kind of jersey that I used to wear a lot of Diane von Furstenberg dresses for work because they were great work dresses from the 70s. They're flattering, they're fabulous, they're really easy to wear, and they're polyester, but they're a kind of acrylic and synthetic fabric that is not made anymore. Italian jerseys that you just can't. They have a certain amount of stretch, but not too much. The way they hold color, the texture, the weight, you can't find it anymore. I also became obsessed with buying vintage Mary Mecco. When I became a mom, for some reason, I think because my mother wore Mary Mecco when I was a girl, I suddenly was like, I need to wear Mary Mecco shirt dresses. I have to wear that. So I became obsessed with buying Mary Mecco shirt dresses, and the kind of weight of that cotton, of those shirt dresses, it started as picnic table cloths that they would turn into oilcloth, but then they stopped putting the oil on it, although the raincoats are still almost like oilcloth tablecloths. And I have some, and I love them with big polka dots on them. But the cotton under the oilcloth that they didn't then put the plastic on became the fabric they used for the clothes. And they hold their shape in a certain way because of the weight. They're not too heavy, so they're not like too bulky, but they're heavy enough that they hold their shape in a really great way that made Mary Mecco very sort of silhouette conscious. And so I became obsessed with collecting vintage Mary Mecco from the 60s and 70s. And what's really cool about all of that, I could go on and on, you can see, but it has the year. But every one of the Mary Meccos, particularly in the 60s and 70s, I think they stopped after a while, but it has a little tag that tells you the year of the garment.
Oh, that's cool.
It's so awesome. It's really amazing. I haven't done any TikToks about it, but it's really awesome. And so I became obsessed with them because nothing's as good. And then I discovered the Hong Kong tailor, and I could get him to remake vintage things. So I would find vintage fabric at the flea market and have him make it. And all my suits that I wear as Blond and Carr, all my pantsuits are made from there's like a Pendleton, a couple of jackets that I love that are 70s jackets. There's a couple of 70s pants. There's a couple of groovy 70s skirts. And I keep remaking them in vintage corduroy that we find at stores that are going out of business. So that's my old is new obsession. And the vintage corduroy is beyond. It's so divine. And it's great for travel because it doesn't really wrinkle. I brought it on tour and folded it and stuffed it into bags and all the things, and it still looks pretty cool on stage. It holds the creases pretty well.
I also love that in the secondhand clothing, that connection to women that had these things in the past and like kind of rediscovering someone else's 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s. I think that's so, there's something so like romantic about that to me. I just think that's cool.
Heartbreakingly beautiful. You learn like Lynn and I will talk, my sister and I will talk about the woman. We'll say, oh my God, she went through a wild phase in the 80s. She really liked shoulder dance. Like we know her.
Yeah,
we know her, and she'll never know, but we are appreciating her from afar somewhere. Yeah, and her city and her time, and the whole thing. It's kind of really dreamy, beautiful. The flea market is so inspiring.
It is. I think that's something that's nice too.
Even when she falls into fashion blunders, and you're going, "Oh my God, what was she thinking here?" And or she loved strawberries. Like you'll see, every child's outfit will be like, and you can tell it's hers because they're from the same department store. And department stores are becoming like a dinosaur now, which is heartbreaking because they're so cool and they were so creative and they were so specific to place. I have a lot of fondness for department stores, and I understand why they don't make any sense in the modern world. The brick and mortar of it is crazy, but it was about certain places and people. They were so aspirational. People used to be excited about going to the department store, and they would see all the. And they were more local. The buyers were, I don't even know that business, but you can tell that the cities were unique in their own ways. Anyway, it's really cool.
Yeah.
You guys are so lovely. You're asking me all the dangerous questions because I can go on and on and on.
Oh, we love that.
No, I was about to say, like, it is.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, you were the perfect podcast guest. I love when people give long, detailed answers like this. It is very helpful to us.
Oh my God! Thank you for saying that, because sometimes I feel like people get to ask about 4 questions when I do these. It's a question and then 15-minute answer, and then another question, and then they're afraid to even ask another one because they don't know how long it's going to go.
Oh no, that's amazing, especially for us.
Thank you.
Speaking of vintage stuff, and I'm curious about the Omnichord and how how
Oh, yeah.
you ended up on that instrument specifically. Like, did you just have an Omnichord already when you started on your songwriting journey?
What's so funny? It's a really funny thing, and this is one of my. I didn't just disconnect you, did I?
Oh no, I'm still here.
Okay. No, sometimes when I press on my ear pod, it does things I don't want it to.
Oh, okay.
As a producer in film, I had a little bit of a spidey sense, and it served me. Like, I'd be reading some article and they would talk about film noir, and they would talk about some strange small press that would put out a lot of hard-boiled kind of fiction, and I'd kind of go, interesting, and then I'd look them up, and then I'd find a book that way. So what happened with this is one of my early heartbreaks in Blond and Carr was my first producer moved out of Los Angeles because of COVID, and I lost my producer. And I thought, even though I wrote the songs, I thought he was the architect of our sound, and I was terrified and sad because I felt I found my voice and now I was not going to have it anymore. And everyone was like, come on, you're the voice, you're going to be fine. Find a new producer. So I started looking for new producers, and someone recommended a producer to me. And he and I talked on the phone, and I realized we weren't a match, but he was such an interesting guy. He made more like world music. And his name is Carmen Rizzo. He's incredible. He travels the world and he records like the Bulgarian women singers, and he's a true artist. And I started following him and all of his amazing things he does. And he posted something, and just in the corner of his Instagram post, he said something about two of my oldest and favorite instruments. My mom really knew what she was doing when she bought me these. And it had a drum machine, and it had this little tiny piece of an Omnichord in the picture. And I thought, wow, that sounds like he knows what he's talking. His mom, he's the one who knows what he's talking about. So I immediately looked up the Omnichord and that drum machine, which I still search for on eBay. I haven't bought one, but I'm going to buy that drum machine. I looked it up on actually Craigslist, and then I looked on YouTube and I saw what it sounded like, and I learned about the Gorilla song, the Clint Eastwood song, and I loved the sound of it. And there were people that posted how to play it. And I'm like, this looks like the coolest thing ever. And because I kept trying to learn guitar and playing horribly, I spent so many hours trying to learn guitar. And I just can't play a clean chord to save my life. And it hurts me, and I practice an hour every day, and I suck. And I thought, I could play this live maybe when I do open mics, and it would sound beautiful. It's a synth. And so the day I saw that, I then looked on Craigslist, and there was this guy selling one, and he said it was mint, and it was a really good price compared to everything I'd seen on eBay, and I bought it that day.
Wow.
And I met him at the gas station near my house, and I bought the Omnichord, and I came home, and it was perfect. It has the manual, and it even had the little overlay, the plastic overlay that has the arrows that says, press here if you want a chord. And I saved all of that. The manual is insane. I'm going to do a TikTok about it because it shows the Omnichord users in 1980 vision of the future, and they're both, it's like an astronaut and a lady from Mars or something. And the astronaut was wearing a spacesuit, and she's got like a weird forehead, and they're trying to speak the same language, and the only common language is Omnichord. So
that's cool.
It's really hilarious. It's very period. And so I became obsessed with it. And then I found out that every producer either has one or wishes they did. And it was always my plan, just like I had seen on YouTube, to try and grow my Blond and Carr audience by doing Omnichord videos. And it was just sort of on my big, long, I had 2 to-do lists, the daily ones and then the long-term ones. And it was on my long-term, like one day I'll figure out YouTube and I'll do Omnichord videos, and I'll learn how to do some covers, and that'll be really cool. And then when I started doing TikToks with Andrew, I said, well, I think it would be cool to do Omnichord videos. And we started, and they immediately got popular, and I so I would do a mix of Blond and Car Omni versions of Blond and Car songs, and then covers, which is the funnest thing in the world because I get to cover all these songs that I adore, old and new. I do try to do 2 a week. It's incredibly time consuming. I spend probably about 10 hours on each song, either learning them and creating the tracks, or just learning them well enough to do a live version, singing and playing. Because I have to memorize all the words and never make a mistake because I stare at the camera the entire time and they're usually one take. A lot of them are one take. And it's teaching me how to perform. If I don't look straight at the camera, they aren't good. And it's been quite educational and demanding. I'm always nervous. We work on Wednesdays, and I'm always like a nervous wreck Tuesday nights, and then always like exhausted Wednesday evenings, even though we'll only work for like 4 hours, but I cried, and then I start again next week.
Yeah.
And
That's so sick.
And but see, I'm the lucky person that gets to do this full time, and I also don't take that for granted. And that's one of the other great things about doing this as a second act, to use that name. I worked my butt off in film forever, and I have never lived extravagantly, and I saved my money, and now I get to do this full time. Plus, I make money in sync.
That is so cool. You know what's funny?
Thank
I feel like I should tell you a few months, like some months back, I forget when, but when I found you on TikTok and we were watching your videos, I went on like a multi-day hunt on eBay and Craigslist trying to find an Omnichord.
I did that too.
Yeah, we were like, we need one. I didn't end up getting one, but
writes to me. You didn't. You got one?
I didn't end up getting one. They were a little bit too expensive. What's up?
Oh, you're saying you did not get one?
Oh, I was like, I wanted one so badly, but I ended up giving up the search because I was a little scared because I didn't want to accidentally buy a broken one for like $300 or something.
And I will tell you that when I got mine, even though it was mint, and you could see that it had almost never been used.
Wow.
I couldn't figure out this one thing, which was how to get it to sustain if you don't hold down the cord. And I thought it was broken. So I called the guy, and I started searching for someone that fixes Omnichords. And even back then, before it was, I think it's more popular now than it was. This is probably maybe a year and a half ago. Even then, the 2 people that were in Indiana and somewhere else that work on Omnichords were like booked for a year. I mean, It was bad.
Unreal.
So you're not wrong to worry about that. And you would be very wise to buy one that either has a very, very strong return policy or where they're in your city so you can really play it and really thoroughly study the instrument. But the bottom line is now they're making them again. Oh. And I haven't seen the new ones. I know they were at NAMM, and I've seen them online, but they're $800, so they are expensive.
Yeah, that's serious.
They have a MIDI connect.
Oh,
so
wow.
The MIDI connect is nice.
Yeah. So are you miking the Omnichord, or does it have some kind of tape?
It has a guitar. It has a 1/4 inch.
Oh, okay. That's actually so cool.
Which is why I go through, and which is cool because, and even the guy that I met that day, he was like, "Yeah, put it through a nice reverb, and you're going to be happy." And I love putting it through the reverb, which I also bought on Craigslist. I just have a Blue Sky reverb, but it makes the drum louder because the bad things, the things that I wonder about with the new one, it's nice that it has the MIDI connect, but it also is awesome that it, I wonder if you could, I mean, I'm sure with the MIDI connect you can make the drum. The drum beats are not the best in the land. They're limited, which is why I'll double and triple them and even like chop them up when I make my recordings. And then I have to tell you one other thing about that, which I just thought of. But because you can play around with the reverb, you can make the low frequencies louder, and even on the live ones, we use the pedal to boost the drum beats.
Wow.
Because they're not as loud, and it's really nice to hear the drum, even just to stay on time. The other thing that's really cool is because everyone keeps asking me to put them on Spotify and to do full versions of the songs, and I'm going to do an Omnichord album. In fact, I want to do many. I want to do volumes of them. But we're going to, as soon as Wilt gets back from tour, which is on a Monday, I'm going to start working on, and we're going to sample. It's going to be purist. We're going to only use Omnichord and vocal, no other instruments, but we're going to sample everything you could do on the Omni, and we're going to do weird things to it so that all the songs are distinctive and that you don't get bored, but it still sounds like an Omnichord, and it's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait. It's going to be super creative. Cannot wait.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if I could ask, maybe, I don't even know, these might be even boring questions, but as far as the specs go on the Omnichord, like so it's a drum machine and it's a synth. Like what other features does it have? Is it kind of like an auto harp or something?
Well, that's, I think, what it intends to be. The strum pad is intending to be an auto harp, but a modern kind of magical kind.
Right.
And it is not it's not really fair to call it a synth, as Gabe, my producer, Nine Theory, has pointed out, because it doesn't have any oscillators. I don't actually know what its mechanics are, but it is not really, by definition, a synth, because it doesn't have oscillators. But it is something you can use with batteries or plug in, and it has a few different sounds. In fact, it has 5 sounds. And I did a little tutorial on it on TikTok, which you can see. But it has the chords, which I call the drone, which are the buttons. And with those, it has major, minor, and seventh. So you can do major seventh, minor seventh. And you can even sort of do diminished, but they don't sound that great. But that's really awesome. And it has, the whole, all the keys. And so that's the chord. But then whatever chord you're in, you can also strum that part that looks like it has like a grate, and that's the strum. And you can strum that. That's a 4-octave thing where you can even play sort of individual notes. You can definitely play broken chords. You can do a lot of really cool things with that. But it will play the chord that is pressed down, and then that's the second sound, is the strum, which is very beautiful and twinkly, and at the high, but it's 4 octaves. So the top parts are the twinkly ones. So if you play up to the top part, it's all twinkly, and if you play to the bottom, it's lower and fuller. And you can do strums where you go in between. I like to go top to bottom and bottom to top at the same time. This is a really full, beautiful sound. And there's all kinds of things you can do with your hands with that. The third sound is it will play individual notes, and there's a way that you can use. It has a memory feature. So, because you only have 2 hands, so you can't press the buttons and do the strum and do the individual notes. But if you do the memory function, it can save up to 24 chords. So you can be pressing just the one button, which is the memory, which is basically triggers the next chord on the memory. And then you can play single notes in the left hand. You also can use a pedal to change chords and then play individual notes. And that's what I use for my bass line and also for my high pads. And even sometimes for like a lead instrument. And we're going to sample the heck out of that for the record. Because like if you're doing a song that has a distinctive riff, it's really fun to do it on that. So I'll do a couple of tracks of that per song. Then it has the drum, which it has preset rhythms that are named by the type of, and that's very Casio. It'll be like, there's 2 rock ones, which are the ones I tend to use the most. There's a disco one. There's a waltz one that's 3/4. And there's a, but they're not amazing. And they're not loud enough. They frustrate me because they're not loud enough. But they're great for live because you at least have that. But what's really funny is what determines, and I don't know how it is on the new one. I haven't studied the tempo setting, but it's basically a turn knob. So it's tricky to find. Like if you're trying to match, I always start with that because if you're trying to match like 124 beats per minute in the Omnichord, it's tricky to get that very not big turn knob to be just the right setting so that it's exactly 124. And then there's a 4th thing, which is this bass thing, which is really corny, which they use prominently in that Clint Eastwood song, and they make it sound really cool. But to me, it sounds really corny. It's very oom-pa-pa. It's like, boom. I mean, I could play it right now, but it sounds pretty dorky, and I have never used it, and I don't know. Maybe we'll use it on a song or 2 on the album, but it would take some work to get it to sound cool.
Wow.
And it tends to go with the drum, which is the one that I haven't found a way to make it cool yet.
It is
that's the Omnichord.
Yeah, it is. It's such a rare instrument too, because I feel like they don't a lot of companies don't try to just invent a new instrument anymore. Or that I hear about, it's just new versions of things that already exist. But it seems like the Omnichord, they were just hey, here's something from space.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm not sure. It's this company, Suzuki. And Suzuki, I don't think it's the same company I think it's Suzuki Motorcycles or something. And I don't know what instruments they made or what. But Suzuki seems to exist enough that they've come back to do this new version of the Omnichord. I know, it's really kooky. I mean, I love Beach House, and they're one of my favorite bands. And when Once Twice Melody came out, they talked about having written some songs on this Casio Rap Man. So I started watching for one of those on eBay for a long time, and I finally bought a cool one that seemed like it was also, fresh out of the box. And I never had the Casio phase where you get to, but that's a kind of a similar thing. It does a lot of weird. It's a rap band, and it has you can sort of fake scratch with it. And I haven't. It's a little more kitschy. I mean, I've never been a person that likes making fun of old stuff, and I fear that in the Omnichord thing, I'm, sort of walking that line. The Casio feels a little bit silly, and yet it isn't silly. It's really cool. And if you're learning to write songs, by the way, in thinking about songwriting, I think it's really cool to get one of those kinds of really simple Casios because you can play chords so easily, and it will free you up from having to be a good keyboard player. And you just find the chord combinations either to a song you already love that you can find online, or that are the prettiest combination you can think of. And then just think of the prettiest melody you could hum over it. And then just think about whatever words come into your head, no matter how shitty they are. And I think the simpler the instrument, the more it frees you up to just think about the pure song. How does the melody go? And you could go da-da-da, or would it be pretty if it went da-da-da? And then just keep making it as pretty as you can think of. And you just have fun exploring the little castle you build in your mind with it. And just take it one little step at a time. But I'm going to explore this little Casio too. I don't know if Casio counts as a and this company Artiphon just reached out to me and sent me a little toy thing that I'm going to learn how to use. But no, it's an interesting point. I love some of these really simple. I'm very tempted to buy a synthesizer, and then I look at the choices. There are too many choices.
Way too many.
Even with a simple one.
Right, and it seems like all of the musicians that do synth EDM stuff, you look at their stage setup and they have 35 keyboards.
Yeah.
It's what are those for?
and you can, and they get really. It's so fun. I use a lot of synths in all of my songs, and we have so much fun with Nine Theory's synthesizers. But he knows, he's great at arpeggiating and knowing how to do. Forget what you can do with just a Phoenix 12, let's say. And then you start arpeggiating it. Forget it. It goes from infinite to infinite time squared to the infinite power. It's just impossible. Because they all sound beautiful. Almost everything sounds beautiful that comes out of a synth. To me, I just love, to me those sounds just are so good. They just sound so satisfying. And what's really cool, and I don't know if you guys make synth music, but what's so cool is that you have to tune them. It always blows my mind that they are, an analog instrument that must be tuned.
Really?
And absolutely.
I've never known that. That's crazy.
Oh my God. In fact, what's really funny is if you decide, one of the things about when you're creating a song is the more analog instruments you use, a guitar, a bass, that you've played live into an interface or into a microphone that's got an interface, the more that is a live sound that's been recorded, like in the old-fashioned way. But when you use MIDI, you can change it because it's digital, and that information, that digital information, you can change tempo, you can change the notes, you can change keys easily. But the synthesizers are the same way. You record them into your interface. They are a vibrating, when I say they don't have oscillators are vibrating mechanical things that are physically moving in space. They are moving air. They are not digital, sort of virtual things. They are moving air in space inside that synthesizer when they are plugged in. And so, yeah, they have to be tuned, and they get out of tune. And if you decide, I've decided I want to change the key by 1/2 step, you have to re-record them all, just as if you were playing guitar.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. You just connected something in my mind, because I've always thought it was perplexing that they invented synthesizers in like the 60s or 70s. And I've always been like, I don't know how that makes sense, but I guess it does. But that makes sense now.
Yeah, you plug them in. They're electronic. They are not an acoustic guitar.
Right.
They are analog. They are not digital. There are digital versions. People make digital versions that make it easier, and you don't have to tune those, I'm sure. And I don't know a ton about synthesizers. I'm really not knowledgeable. I hope I'm not saying something stupid, but I don't know, maybe because I'm a vintage girl, I just love the fact that they are analog and that they are kind of living, breathing things. They're not. And it's amazing, and I love it to death. I love it. I love all of the things that it enables us to do. And it's the greatest. Digital music is amazing, and we're very fortunate that it's here. But analog is just, you just have to love. Oh my God, these beautiful. In fact, these beautiful old Anyway, that's what happens. I love this trend on TikTok of going, we're Los Angelinos, of course, we blank,
Right.
Well, we're musicians. We always want new instruments. We always want new gear. I fall for that completely. And you just always want, whatever you bought, you always want a new mic. You always want a new guitar. You always want a new synth. You always want a new toy. And it's, because it's just so fun to explore all the little things they can do. Mm-hmm. When I had COVID, I became obsessed with pedals. I don't know what was one of the only things that comforted me or distracted me because I was not feeling well. And I watched all these tutorials on pedal boards and pedals and the best order in which to do pedals. And I just fell in love with, it's just amazing that people who make pedals that you can use on all kinds of instruments, but particularly for guitars and basses. So cool.
Yeah, you have, this has been this interviewing people can be really hard, but this episode has been absolutely replenishing. You were an excellent guest.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I've had such a nice time, and I can't even remember what time we started, but I think I've been talking a long time. I hope it isn't going to be difficult to edit.
Of course not.
I hope that, was there anything else that fits your podcast that we haven't covered?
Well,
I'll stay on topic.
We really wanted to talk about your new song that you had coming out.
Oh, I do want to talk about my new song. Okay, here's the miracle. The many miracles that have happened to me in music, which is that I released a song called My Hi Gummygirl, which is my love letter to my stoner daughter. Oh. And it became, because it's a distinctive, there aren't a million songs about a mom writing a love letter song in dream pop's, style to her stoner daughter. So
yeah, that's rare.
And I played it on Omnichord, and it became a viral song on TikTok. And one of the beautiful people that found that song is the artist Ella Vos, who I had been, a huge fan of. I've been on playlists with her, and I discovered her music long before I ever thought I would know her. And she loved the song and wrote to me on Instagram and said, I have this fantasy that we do something together on Omnichord, because she has one too. Oh. And I was like, oh my gosh, let's go write a song. So I came over. We had the most beautiful day. We wrote this adorable song called Dress Up, which we wrote together. She sings most of it, but I sing on some of it. We played Omnichord on it. We had that most heavenly day. I drove home from the most blissed out session, meeting this dream girl and writing this lovely song that I was proud of. And then she texted me, do you ever think about touring? And it was as though I died and went to heaven, because it's sort of a dream I've never let myself dream, that I would ever go on tour and play my music for people. But she invited me to open for her on the tour that was coming up a month and a half away, with all these really cool clubs back east. So the day we met, she asked me to go on tour with her.
Wow.
And I said yes, and then began learning how to play my Omnichord and my keyboards live on tour. And we did that last December, and it was the funnest thing ever. And she's become just my soul sister, and I love her to death. And I guess we look enough alike that people keep thinking that I wrote my Hi Gummygirl about her and that she's my daughter. And I'm always so flattered, because I think she's the most lovely human that I've almost ever met. And she's just a pure artist. I got to listen to her. One of the best things about being on tour was that I got to hear her show twice a night, both in sound check and then at the shows. And she was touring her most recent record, which is called Super Glue, which is a fabulously beautiful record of every song is a hit. Every song should be the single. I fall in love. I'm like always texting her in the morning and say, like, I woke up with, baby, like, what's it called? I'm forgetting the name of the song, baby. Oh my God. Or I'll wake up with one or the other in my brain. And they're all so amazing. So she has a new record coming out, and decided to make the first single, the song that we wrote together that day, Dress Up. And so it's coming out Friday, the 19th, which is Taylor Swift Day, which is crazy because no one's going to be able to think about anything but the new Taylor Swift album. But hopefully they'll have a tiny little room left in their brain to think about our song, Dress Up, which is a joint release by Ella Vos and Blond. And it's a lovely, dreamy, happy song that it's a very joyous song. We've teased it like crazy on TikTok, and everyone's like, when are you releasing the full version? And I'm super excited to have that come out with my dream girl, Ella Vos. Ella only wears green. Talk about a unique brand. She only wears green and a few associated colors, but she's got the most. And so it's awesome to do that, because then if you're the person that only wears a particular color, everyone who knows and loves you, every time I see something awesome that's green, I buy it for her. You get presents that way. It's very smart. I know that's not why, but when you see that awesome green, ice bucket, you're like, oh, I've got to buy this for Ella. So, yes, thank you for asking about it. I'm super proud, and I really hope people will find the song and enjoy it, because it was made with love, and it's a really happy song.
Yeah, and it's almost meant to be, too. That's exactly the date that we're going to be releasing this episode, because that's next Friday. We release on Fridays.
Oh, my God. So I guess I should then say it comes out today.
It's today. Go listen to it.
Yeah, so you bet.
Check it out.
Yeah, we'll 100% be listening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet you both and to talk.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Putting on such a beautiful podcast.
Of course.
I'm sure it's fun to do, and I'm sure that it brings people together in a really wonderful way.
It does, which we're very grateful for. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and perspectives. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, we hope we can stay in touch and maybe even do some follow-up sometime in the future, or even see you on tour or something. So.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever come to Boston.
Well, we didn't get to go to Boston on this last tour, and I know that Ella Vos and I really would love to tour again, and people are starting to ask me to tour. So, yeah, I will be there, and I can't wait, and then we'll finally get to meet in person, which will be lovely.
We'll be there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you to everybody that listened. Go listen to Blond and Carr's new song.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just lovely. Be well. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Boston Art Podcast is an independent DIY production by Brian Huntress and Theodora Earthworms. The information contained in this episode represents the views and opinions of the original creators or our guests, and does not represent any institution, organization, or business. Find us on Instagram at Boston Art Podcast, and tune in for a new episode every Friday. Thank you for listening.